Security is on their way, young lady. Credit card fraud is a federal crime. Those words echoed through Gate 15 at Denver International Airport as 13-year-old Julie Turner stood frozen, watching pieces of her torn boarding pass flutter to the ground like confetti at the worst party of her life. But this wasn't just embarrassment. This was the complete destruction of a little girl's world. Tears streamed down her face as senior flight attendant Vanessa Newton towered over her, red-faced and furious, while dozens of passengers stopped to stare at the unfolding drama. Julie's chest tightened with the kind of panic that makes it hard to breathe. She clutched her phone with trembling hands, her voice barely a whisper as she pleaded, "Please, I'm telling the truth. My dad bought this ticket. I have all the confirmation emails right here on my phone." But Vanessa wasn't having any of it. "Enough lies," she snapped, her voice cutting through the busy terminal like a knife. Without warning, she grabbed Julie's wrist, her grip tight enough to leave marks. "A kid like you doesn't belong in first class. I've been doing this job for 15 years and I've seen this exact scam before." The accusation hit Julie like a physical blow that knocked the wind out of her. Airport security was already approaching, their heavy footsteps echoing across the polished floor like a funeral march, while passengers pulled out their phones to record what was quickly becoming a viral moment. Julie's heart pounded so hard she thought it might explode as she looked around desperately at the crowd of filming passengers, her voice cracking with the desperation of someone who knew her world was falling apart. "Someone please call my dad, Timothy Turner." She had no idea that those two words, Timothy Turner, would soon turn Vanessa's world completely upside down. You see, what Vanessa didn't know was about to change everything in the next 27 minutes. But before I reveal the shocking truth that left an entire airport speechless, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because stories like this prove that sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the most unexpected places. Now, here's what I want to know. Have you ever witnessed someone being treated unfairly in public? What did you do about it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because Julie's story is about to show us exactly what happens when assumptions meet reality in the most dramatic way possible. But to understand how we got to that soul-crushing moment at Gate 15, we need to go back 3 days earlier to a corner office overlooking the Sterling Aviation headquarters, where 13-year-old Julie Turner sat doing her math homework while her father, Timothy Turner, reviewed quarterly reports. This wasn't just any father-daughter moment. Timothy Turner wasn't just any businessman. He was a distinguished man in his 40s who had built an empire from absolutely nothing. The walls of his office told a heartbreaking and inspiring story. Family photos showing Julie's late mother, Clara, who had passed away from cancer when Julie was just 8 years old, leaving behind a hole in both their hearts that they were still learning to fill together. Every academic achievement certificate covering those walls represented not just Julie's success, but Timothy's promise to his dying wife that he would give their daughter every opportunity in the world. And most remarkably, there was a framed photo of Timothy in a baggage handler uniform from 20 years earlier, a daily reminder of how far determination could take you when your heart was breaking, but you refused to give up. That's right. The man who now owned Sterling Aviation had started at the very bottom, loading suitcases in the rain and snow, crying himself to sleep some nights, dreaming of something bigger, not just for himself but for the little girl who had lost her mother too soon. "Dad, are you sure I can handle flying alone to Grandma's?" Julie asked, looking up from her math problems with uncertainty in her eyes. The question carried weight beyond just travel anxiety. Since her mother's death, Julie had developed a deep fear of being separated from her father, terrified that something might happen to him too. Timothy felt his heart clench as he saw that familiar look of vulnerability in his daughter's eyes. He paused his work and walked over to sit beside her, his voice gentle but firm. "Julie, you're one of the strongest people I know. Remember when you started that charity drive at school? You raised $5,000 because you believed in something." And he was absolutely right. This wasn't just any 13-year-old. After watching her mother battle cancer, Julie had organized a school-wide fundraiser for children's cancer research, channeling her grief into purpose. She had the same steel in her spine that had carried her father from the baggage claim to the boardroom. The apple hadn't fallen far from the tree, but both had been forged in the fire of loss and love. Just then, Timothy's assistant Marcus entered with travel documents. "Mr. Turner, Julie's first-class ticket to Chicago is confirmed. I've arranged for special assistance if needed." But Julie surprised them both, her chin lifting with determination that made Timothy's eyes well up with pride and heartbreak. "That won't be necessary," she said with newfound confidence. "I want to do this myself." Timothy smiled through the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. His little girl was growing up, becoming the independent woman her mother had always dreamed she would be. "That's my girl. But remember, if anyone gives you trouble..." "I know, Dad. You've taught me to stand up for what's right." Julie's voice carried echoes of her mother's strength and her father's wisdom. If only they had known what was waiting for her. If only they had known that Julie's first real test of independence would become a nightmare that would haunt them both. Fast forward to the day of travel. Julie arrived at Denver International Airport, walking with the confidence of a young woman who had been raised to believe she could conquer the world. She navigated check-in with her ID and boarding pass, carrying herself with the poise that came from being loved unconditionally and taught to love herself. But something magical happened when she reached the Sterling Aviation counter. The agent, Clara, immediately recognized the family name, and her face lit up like Christmas morning. "Miss Turner, it's an honor," Clara exclaimed, her voice full of genuine warmth. "Your father is amazing. He gave my brother a scholarship through the company program. Changed our whole family's life." Julie's heart swelled with the kind of pride that made her feel like she could fly without the airplane. Dad says success means nothing if you don't lift others up. And as Julie walked through the terminal toward security, she couldn't help but overhear Sterling Aviation employees talking in their break rooms, their voices full of respect and gratitude. "Ever since Turner took over, this place actually cares about people," one baggage handler told another. "He remembers what it's like to be us, never forgot where he came from." Julie's eyes filled with happy tears as she texted her dad, "Everyone here loves you, can't wait to make you proud on this trip." She settled into the first-class boarding area with a book about aviation pioneers, her confidence and poise catching the attention of other passengers. Everything seemed perfect. Julie was living proof that her father's values had shaped her into a remarkable young woman who carried her mother's grace and her father's determination. But then, like a storm cloud rolling in on a sunny day, senior flight attendant Vanessa Newton entered the boarding area, immediately scanning the space with cold, judgmental eyes that seemed to suck the warmth right out of the room. If you're feeling the emotional weight of this incredible story of family, loss, success, and what's about to become a life-changing confrontation, smash that subscribe button, because what happens next will break your heart before it puts it back together. Here's what I want to know. What do you think gave Julie the confidence to travel alone at just 13 years old? Was it her father's success, her own achievements, or the memory of her mother's strength? Let me know in the comments, because that confidence is about to be shattered in ways no child should ever experience. What happened next would haunt Vanessa Newton for the rest of her life. But she had no idea what she was about to unleash on a little girl who had already survived more pain than most adults. Vanessa Newton was a 15-year veteran flight attendant with a pristine uniform and a stern expression that had intimidated countless passengers over the years. As she began her pre-boarding routine, her eyes immediately locked onto Julie, like a predator spotting wounded prey. There was something about seeing a young black girl in first class that triggered every ugly assumption buried in her heart. "Excuse me, sweetie," Vanessa approached with a kind of false sweetness that makes your skin crawl and your stomach turn. "Are you sure you're in the right area? Economy boarding is over there." Julie looked up politely from her book about aviation pioneers. The cruel irony was already building. Her mother had taught her to always be respectful to adults, even when they didn't deserve it. "No ma'am, I'm flying first class today." She held up her boarding pass with the confidence her father had spent 5 years rebuilding after her mother's death. But Vanessa examined that boarding pass like she was a detective, looking for evidence of murder. "Huh. And who purchased this ticket for you?" "My father, Timothy Turner." Julie's voice was steady, but inside, something cold was starting to creep up her spine. "Really?" Vanessa's tone shifted, growing skeptical in a way that made other passengers start to notice. The temperature in the boarding area seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What does your father do for a living?" Now here's where Julie made a decision that would change everything. She hesitated, her mother's voice whispering in her memory about being humble and not bragging about their family's success. "He works in aviation." That answer made Vanessa's expression harden like concrete in winter. "Listen, honey, I've been doing this for 15 years. I know when something doesn't add up." An elderly woman named Millicent, who had been watching this entire exchange with growing horror, finally spoke up. "Is there a problem here? The young lady seems perfectly lovely." But Vanessa's professional facade was already cracking like ice on a frozen lake. "This doesn't concern you, ma'am," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass and draw blood. That's when Julie felt her confidence start to crumble. She was 13 years old, alone in an airport, and suddenly realized this wasn't going to end well. The familiar panic of being separated from her father, the same panic she'd felt in hospital waiting rooms, began to claw at her chest. What came next was a masterclass in how assumptions can destroy an innocent child's world. Vanessa's suspicions snowballed into full-blown accusations that hit Julie like physical blows. "I need to see a credit card with your name on it." Julie's voice got smaller, more vulnerable, sounding exactly like the frightened little girl who had watched her mother fade away in a hospital bed. "I'm 13. I don't have a credit card." "Exactly my point." Vanessa's voice rose, drawing the attention of everyone in the boarding area, like spectators to a public execution. "No parent puts a child in first class unless something fishy is going on." Desperate and feeling the walls closing in, Julie pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "I can call my dad right now." "Put that away," Vanessa commanded like she was talking to a criminal instead of a terrified child. "I don't have time for elaborate schemes." That's when the phones came out. Passengers began filming as Vanessa publicly humiliated a 13-year-old girl who had done absolutely nothing wrong except exist while black in a space where someone decided she didn't belong. A businessman tried to step in. "Ma'am, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." But Vanessa was beyond reason, beyond humanity. "Sir, I'm handling a potential fraud situation. Please step back." Julie's composure finally shattered like her mother's favorite vase had the day after the funeral. Through tears that tasted like salt and shame, she made one last desperate attempt to save herself. "I'm not lying. My dad is Timothy Turner, and he owns—" "Stop right there." Vanessa exploded, her voice echoing through the terminal like thunder before lightning strikes. "Now you're claiming your father owns what? Let me guess, he owns the airline?" She laughed with the kind of cruelty that leaves scars on children's hearts, as passengers gasped in horror. But here's the thing that should have made everyone's blood run cold. Julie nodded through her tears, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Yes, he does." The irony hung in the air like poison gas, but Vanessa was too blinded by her prejudice to see what was right in front of her. And then came the moment that would be replayed millions of times across social media. Vanessa physically grabbed Julie's boarding pass and tore it into pieces, the sound of ripping paper echoing like a gunshot through gate 15. Each torn piece felt like another piece of Julie's heart being ripped away. If this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat while breaking your heart, make sure you subscribe, because what happens when Timothy Turner finds out about this will shock you to your core. Here's my question for you. Have you ever seen someone in authority abuse their power like this against a child? What would you have done if you witnessed Vanessa treating Julie this way? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story is about to take a turn that nobody saw coming. What happened next would destroy Vanessa's life forever. But she was too blinded by her prejudice to see the tsunami of consequences coming straight for her. Vanessa grabbed her radio with the confidence of someone who had never been wrong before, who had never faced real consequences for her actions. "Airport security to Gate 15 for suspected credit card fraud," she announced, her voice cutting through the terminal like a death sentence for a child's innocence. Meanwhile, Julie desperately tried to reach her father, her trembling fingers dialing his number over and over through blurred vision. Each unanswered ring felt like another nail in her coffin. But the phone went straight to voicemail. Timothy was on his own flight, heading to Chicago to surprise his daughter, completely unaware that his little girl was being destroyed by one of his own employees while he sat 30,000 feet in the air, helpless. Julie, now sobbing with the kind of heartbreak that ages you instantly, turned to the crowd of filming passengers with the desperation of someone drowning in deep water. "Please, someone help me call Sterling Aviation headquarters. Ask for Timothy Turner. Tell them Julie needs help." Her voice cracked on the word help, and it sounded exactly like she had when she was 8 years old, begging doctors to make her mommy better. That's when Millicent, the elderly woman who had tried to defend Julie earlier, pulled out her phone with hands that shook with righteous anger. "I'm calling the airline right now, sweetheart. Don't you worry." But it felt too late. Security had arrived like stormtroopers, and while Officer Santiago approached the situation, something unprecedented was happening online. Social media posts were spreading like wildfire across every platform. "Justice for Julie" started trending as passengers uploaded videos with captions like, "This is wrong. Someone help this girl, and this breaks my heart." Vanessa gave her statement to security with the arrogance of someone who believed she was untouchable. "This minor is attempting to board first class with fraudulent documentation. I suspect stolen credit cards and identity theft." Julie overheard every word and broke down completely, her sobs echoing through the terminal. "I just wanted to make my dad proud. I wanted to show him I could travel alone." The words came out between gasps, and anyone with a heart could hear the little girl who missed her mother and just wanted to prove she was brave enough to make both her parents proud. Even Officer Santiago seemed uncomfortable with the situation, his own daughter's face flashing in his mind. "Miss, the documentation appears legitimate." But Vanessa doubled down on her mistake with the stubbornness of someone who would rather destroy a child than admit she was wrong. "I'm telling you, I know fraud when I see it." That's when something miraculous happened. In the distance, cutting through the chaos and the crowd noise like a voice from heaven, a sound echoed through the terminal that would change everything. "Julie! Julie!" Timothy Turner's voice boomed through Gate 15 as he ran toward his daughter. Still wearing his business suit from an earlier meeting, his face a mask of panic and fury. The crowd began to part like the Red Sea, and that's when passengers started to realize something incredible. Timothy Turner's face adorned Sterling Aviation's corporate materials throughout the entire airport. "Dad!" Julie collapsed into her father's arms like a dam bursting. 5 years of being strong without her mother finally giving way to the relief of being safe in Daddy's arms again. Timothy immediately assessed the situation with the precision of a man who had built an empire from nothing. But his heart was breaking as he held his sobbing daughter. He saw the torn boarding pass scattered on the floor like confetti from hell. The security presence and his daughter's tear-stained face that reminded him painfully of the day they buried her mother. What exactly happened here? His voice was controlled but carried the kind of danger that makes smart people step back and pray. But Vanessa, incredibly, still didn't connect the dots. She stepped forward with the confidence of someone about to make the biggest mistake of her life. "Sir, your daughter was attempting to board first class with suspicious documentation. I followed proper protocol." "My daughter?" Timothy's eyebrows raised in a way that should have terrified her into silence. "Do you know who I am?" That's when Millicent stepped forward with her phone, her voice shaking with emotion. "Mr. Turner, I called Sterling Aviation headquarters. They confirmed everything. This woman has been terrorizing your little girl." And like watching someone's soul leave their body in real time, recognition finally dawned on Vanessa's face. She noticed other Sterling Aviation employees approaching, their expressions horrified as they realized what their colleague had done to the CEO's daughter. The same little girl whose picture sat on Timothy's desk. The same little girl who had lost her mother and whose father would move mountains to protect her. Marcus, Timothy's assistant, arrived completely out of breath. "Mr. Turner, we saw the social media posts. The entire executive team is en route. The videos, they're everywhere." Timothy's response was swift and devastating, delivered with the cold precision of a man who had just watched someone torture his child. "Vanessa Newton, you are terminated immediately. Security, please escort her from the premises." "You can't do this," Vanessa protested, but her voice had lost all its earlier authority, now sounding like the desperate whine of someone whose world was crumbling. "I was just doing my job." "Your job," Timothy's voice cut through her excuses like a sword forged in a father's rage, "was to treat passengers with dignity and respect. Instead, you racially profiled and humiliated my 13-year-old daughter. You made her feel like she didn't belong in her own father's airline." He turned to Officer Santiago, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had built an empire and would use every bit of that power to protect his child. "I want to press federal charges for discrimination and harassment of a minor." The viral videos had already reached millions of views, with comments pouring in from around the world. Timothy addressed the crowd of passengers, his voice breaking slightly as he held his still trembling daughter. "What happened here today is unacceptable. Sterling Aviation will implement immediate company-wide anti-discrimination training and establish a passenger advocacy program." Julie, still shaken but finding her strength in her father's arms, spoke directly to the cameras through her tears. "I hope this helps other kids who might face something like this. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect. My mom always said that kindness costs nothing, but cruelty costs everything." 6 months later, the consequences were staggering and served as a reminder that actions have consequences. Vanessa received 18 months in federal prison, $75,000 in fines, and a lifetime ban from aviation employment. Her LinkedIn profile was deleted, her references destroyed, her reputation obliterated. Sterling Aviation's decisive response led to industry-wide changes, with new federal regulations requiring comprehensive bias training. But the most beautiful part of this story happened 1 year later. Julie, now confident and poised, boarded her next first-class flight. Clara, the same gate agent who had recognized her family name, greeted her warmly with tears in her eyes. "Welcome aboard, Miss Turner. Your father's reforms have made flying better for everyone. Your mother would be so proud." Timothy watched from the jet bridge as Julie boarded independently, their bond stronger than ever, forged in the fire of injustice and strengthened by the power of love and justice. Sometimes the most important lessons come from the courage to stand up for what's right, no matter how old you are. Sterling Aviation achieved record customer satisfaction scores, and Julie established a scholarship program for underprivileged youth interested in aviation, turning her nightmare into hope for others, just like her mother had always taught her to do. If this incredible story of injustice, family love, and ultimate redemption moved you to tears, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because stories like this prove that sometimes the universe has a perfect sense of timing, and love always wins. Here's my final question for you. Do you think Vanessa's punishment was fair? Or should it have been more severe? And what would you have done if you were Timothy Turner at that moment? Let me know in the comments below, because this story shows us that actions have consequences. Sometimes love comes in the form of justice, and a parent's love can move mountains to protect their child.